Taylor Swift is getting married at Madison Square Garden, and I need you to sit with that for a second. Not Rhode Island, not some private estate in the middle of nowhere, Madison Square Garden. And if you've been following the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni mess for the past year and a half, like I have, you already know exactly why that location made me audibly gasp when I saw the headline. Because this isn't just a venue choice, you guys. This is, in my opinion, one of the pettiest, most calculated, most quietly brutal moves I have seen from Taylor Swift in years. And honestly, I can't even be mad at it. I'm not a Taylor fan, I want to be clear about that. But credit where credit is due, this woman just played chess while everyone else was playing checkers. And the person who got checkmated is Blake Lively. Let me back up so this makes sense, because the Madison Square Garden of it all is the entire story here. Back in May of 2025, before Taylor and Travis Kelce were even engaged, Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's lawyer, said something to TMZ that became one of the most repeated lines of this whole legal saga. He said if Blake Lively was really serious about testifying for the world to see, they should live stream her deposition at Madison Square Garden and donate the proceeds to domestic violence survivors. That was the quote. And the headlines ran with it for what felt like forever. Blake Lively deposition, Madison Square Garden, over and over. And Blake was furious. Her team treated that comment like it was a war crime. When she went after sanctions for deposition misconduct in December of 2025, that Madison Square Garden line got brought up again. And again, her lawyers used it constantly in motions, in filings, basically any time they wanted to remind Judge Lyman that the other side was turning a serious matter into a circus. Her rep, Leslie Sloan, put out that statement saying Ms. Lively was looking forward to her deposition and that it should follow the same rules as any other witness, and that Baldoni's lawyer had tried to make the case a public spectacle at every turn, even proposing to sell tickets to a televised deposition at Madison Square Garden. That phrase lived rent-free in Blake's legal filings. It became almost a catchphrase for her team's whole victim narrative. So, now, a year and 2 months later, Taylor Swift, Blake Lively's former best friend, the woman whose name has been dragged through this lawsuit, whose texts got exposed, who got subpoena drama and headline after headline tying her to Blake's case, is getting married at Madison Square Garden, the exact venue, the one that Blake's lawyers turned into a symbol of her humiliation. Taylor is reclaiming it. And I'm sorry, but there is no universe where Taylor Swift, the queen of Easter eggs, the woman who hides messages in nail polish colors and elevator buttons, picked that venue by accident. She knows what Madison Square Garden means in this story. Everybody who followed this case knows. And from where I'm sitting, this is the most obvious Easter egg she has ever dropped. And she's dropped some obvious ones. Think about what this actually does. For over a year, SEO has tied Taylor's name to Blake Lively, to this lawsuit, to Madison Square Garden, to all of it. Every search, every tag, every headline tangled together. And now when you search Taylor Swift and Madison Square Garden, you're going to get wedding photos, you're going to get the dress, the vows, the celebration. She is literally overriding the narrative. Madison Square Garden will forever be linked with Taylor's wedding, not Blake's deposition tantrum. That's not petty in a small way. That's petty in an architectural way. She rebuilt the search results around her own happiness. And the wedding itself sounds enormous. We're talking somewhere in the range of 1,200 to 1,400 guests from what's being reported, which, when you think about it, makes sense. Travis is a football player, Taylor is the biggest musical artist on the planet, and between the two of them, they probably know half of the entertainment and sports industries combined. These two love a good celebration. This is going to be a spectacle. Now, I do suspect the actual legal marriage might happen quietly before the big event. A lot of celebrities do that, sign the paperwork privately, and then treat the wedding as the party. But either way, the vows are happening at the garden. And here's a detail I find genuinely interesting. Apparently, a big part of why they chose Madison Square Garden is privacy. The whole place locks down. You can drive straight in, nobody sneaks in, nobody gets a long lens photo of Taylor in her dress before she decides what to do with the pictures, whether she sells them, releases them herself, or keeps them private like Blake and Ryan did with their wedding photos. And yes, Blake and Ryan never released theirs. That control stays entirely with Taylor. So, on paper, it's a practical choice. Fortress-level security, total privacy, room for a guest list the size of a small town. But come on, you don't get to be Taylor Swift, the most strategic celebrity of her generation, and pretend the symbolism is a coincidence. This is a 2-for-1. Get married somewhere nobody can photograph you, and simultaneously plant a flag on the exact spot your ex-best friend's legal team turned into their favorite talking point. It's the wedding equivalent of writing a diss track without saying a single name. Blake, you didn't do your deposition at Madison Square Garden, but Taylor will say her vows there. And the timing makes it sting even more because remember, Taylor and Travis only got engaged in late summer, early fall of last year. There was all that speculation about Rhode Island, about her place there, even chatter about a venue being taken from someone else. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had Madison Square Garden on their bingo card. And then there's the part of the story that I genuinely cannot get over, the invitation, or more accurately, the lack of one. Blake Lively is not invited to this wedding. And look, I know that sounds like the least surprising sentence ever spoken, but apparently it's news to some people, including, if certain reports are to be believed, Blake herself. Because a headline crossed my feed claiming Blake is upset about the snub, that she feels like this whole thing is the ultimate dig aimed directly at her. And here's the part that made me laugh out loud. According to that reporting, it's not even the Madison Square Garden symbolism that's bothering her. It's the guest list. It's the fact that Taylor is inviting somewhere north of 1,000 people, 1,200, 1,400, some enormous number, and Blake still didn't make the cut. Sit with that. Taylor Swift is throwing a wedding nearly the size of a Duggar family reunion, packed with friends of friends, people she sort of knows, people Travis played golf with once, someone's college roommate's cousin, and Blake Lively, the woman who once called Taylor her best friend, the woman whose kids Taylor wrote into song lyrics, isn't on the list. That's not an oversight. You don't forget someone when you're inviting 1,400 people. That is a decision. A deliberate, intentional, underlined twice decision. And honestly, if you're Blake, I get why that version hurts more. Being left off an intimate 50-person guest list is one thing. Being left off a stadium guest list is a statement. But here's my question, and I've been asking it for months. Why is Blake surprised? Why is anyone surprised? These two have not been close for a very long time. By my count, the last time Taylor and Blake actually spoke, like the two of them on the phone, human to human, was probably January of 2025. Anything after that went through lawyers. February of 2025. Lawyers. That's not a friendship cooling off. That's a friendship in a coffin. We're now well over a year past that point, and Blake is reportedly still out here, acting like there was a chance her name would appear on that invitation list. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Blake strikes me as the girl who simply does not accept the word no. She keeps circling, keeps waiting for Taylor to notice her, to say hi, to let her back in, and Taylor just keeps doing what Taylor does best when she's done with someone, ignoring them with the force of 1,000 suns. Now, some people held out hope because of Karlie Kloss. Remember, Karlie and Taylor had their own famous falling out years ago, and Karlie reportedly got an invite. So the logic went, well, if Karlie can come back from exile, maybe Blake can too. But no. No. Those situations are not the same thing, and I need people to understand why. Taylor's past feuds were frankly kind of petty. The Katy Perry thing was about backup dancers. She got irritated at Olivia Rodrigo over song credits, even though, in my opinion, Olivia didn't actually steal anything, which is a little rich coming from Taylor, considering she then turned around and made The Life of a Showgirl, an album where the whole title and theme feel borrowed straight from a Vegas artist playbook. But that's a rant for another day. The point is, those were petty pop girl squabbles, hurt feelings, bruised egos, the kind of thing that can thaw over time. What happened with Blake is a different animal entirely. This wasn't a spat over dancers. This was Blake's lawsuit, dragging Taylor, her name, her texts, her reputation into a legal meat grinder for over a year. And when those text messages got released into the public record, it was genuinely jaw-dropping. We all saw them. We saw Taylor allegedly telling Blake she had just gotten uncanceled, the fastest uncancellation literally ever. We saw the jokes about Justin Baldoni taking out his tiny violin. Those messages didn't just embarrass Blake, they exposed both of them. Because what came through in black and white was that these two operated the same way, calculated, strategic. The text made Taylor look fully on board with being Blake's dragon, exactly like that infamous reference suggested. Taylor's PR machine had spent months insisting she wanted no part of any of it, that she was shocked and dismayed to be pulled in. And then the receipts showed someone who, at least early on, seemed very much in the loop. So let's not pretend Taylor's hands are spotless here, because they're not. Her team put out statements that, in hindsight, do not hold up well next to those texts. She played the "my privacy was violated" card hard, which takes some nerve when you remember the allegations on the other side. the claims about Jenny Rubel's phone, about data being taken and laughed about. There was a lot of victim playing going around, and frankly, both of these women have black belts in it. They're always the victim. Every story, every filing, every press cycle, somehow they're the wounded party. That's actually part of why I believe this friendship was never really a friendship in the first place. It was an arrangement, a mutually beneficial publicity alliance between two extremely image-conscious women who understood each other's game perfectly. Real friends listen to each other. Real friends tell each other hard truths. Real friends say, hey, maybe don't do this. What these two had was something closer to a strategic partnership. And strategic partnerships dissolve the second one party becomes a liability. And oh, did Blake become a liability? Because the moment that, to me, marks the true end of this friendship isn't the lawsuit itself. It's what allegedly happened around the Super Bowl in early 2025. Blake reportedly wasn't invited to join Taylor's box, and according to the reporting that's floated around this case, Blake didn't take that quietly. What allegedly happened next is the kind of thing you don't come back from. The kind of move that doesn't just end a friendship, but salts the earth where it stood. What allegedly went down, according to reporting around this case, is that Blake threatened to release decades' worth of private text messages between her and Taylor unless Taylor put out a public statement of support. Let me say that again because it deserves a second pass. Blake Lively allegedly looked at her supposed best friend of 10 years and essentially said, "Back me publicly or I burn everything." That's not a friend asking for help. That's leverage. That's frankly the kind of move you make against an enemy, not a person whose children you vacationed with. And if even half of that reporting is accurate, I completely understand why January 2025 was the last phone call. Because once someone shows you they're willing to weaponize your private conversations, the relationship isn't damaged. It's finished permanently. There's no Carly Kloss redemption arc after that. There's no thawing. There's just silence and lawyers. And here's the kicker. Blake didn't even follow through on the threat in the way you'd expect, but the text came out anyway because Blake had a clear exit ramp before the great unsealing. She could have dropped the case before summary judgment. She could have walked away before everything that was sitting under seal got dumped into the public record. She chose not to. She kept going, and in doing so, she effectively guaranteed that her private messages with Taylor, the uncancellation text, the tiny violin jokes, all of it would end up plastered across every entertainment outlet on the planet. And you know what Taylor did to stop it? Nothing. She never intervened. She never fought to keep those texts sealed. She just stood back and let it happen. And I find that fascinating because to me that silence was louder than any statement her publicist could have written. It was Taylor saying, "You made this mess, you can sit in it." Now, was Taylor loyal in all this? Absolutely not, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. When the temperature got too high, Taylor did what Taylor has always done. She looked out for Taylor. She distanced, she deflected, she let her people frame her as an innocent bystander who'd been dragged into someone else's conflict, and she quietly stepped over Blake's body on her way out the door. That's cold, but it's also entirely predictable if you've watched this woman's career for more than 5 minutes. Self-preservation is her superpower. And the difference between these two women, the thing this entire saga has exposed, is brutally simple. Taylor never needed Blake. Blake desperately needs Taylor. Think about it. Taylor's career didn't lose a single mile per hour through any of this. She toured, she released music, she got engaged, and now she's throwing the wedding of the decade. Blake, meanwhile, Blake's entire public strategy for the past year has felt like one long scream for relevance. The constant posting, the carefully staged date nights with Ryan, making sure everyone knows they're not broke, not divorcing, very happy. Thank you for asking. The designer bags paraded on social media while reportedly liens sit against that unfinished mansion and the legal bills accumulate and her team fights over attorney's fees. It's giving overcompensation. It's giving, please look at me. And the saddest part is that so much of it still seems aimed at one audience member in particular, the one who stopped watching a year and a half ago. That's why this wedding venue choice lands the way it does. Because Taylor doesn't have to say a word. She doesn't have to give an interview, drop a lyric, or have a source whisper to a tabloid. She just books Madison Square Garden, the venue Brian Friedman dangled as a taunt, the venue Blake's lawyers complained about in filing after filing, the phrase that appeared in sanctions motions like a recurring nightmare, and lets the symbolism do all the talking. No live stream, no oath, no DV survivor ticket sales, just vows, 1,400 guests, and one very conspicuous empty seat that was never going to be filled. Remember that line from the unsealed text? The one about everyone thinking they were playing checkers while they were actually playing chess? Taylor just proved it applies to her own friendships too. This is the chess move. Reclaim the venue, rewrite the search results, throw a party big enough to be visible from space, and leave your former best friend standing outside the gates with her nose pressed against the glass. By this time next year, nobody will type Madison Square Garden into a search bar and find Blake Lively's deposition drama. They'll find a wedding dress, they'll find first dance footage, they'll find joy. Taylor's joy built directly on top of the spot Blake's team tried to claim as their battlefield. That's not just winning, that's clearing the ground and planting a garden on it. And look, I want to be honest about where I stand because I'm not on either of these women's teams. I think they're cut from the same cloth, calculated, image-obsessed, allergic to accountability, and forever positioned as the victim in their own retellings. If you're a schemer, fine. Be a schemer, but at least own it. Neither of them does. The difference is purely in execution. Blake schemes loudly, messily, and leaves fingerprints everywhere. Taylor schemes in silence and lets venues, Easter eggs, and guest lists deliver the message for her. One of them is currently drowning in legal fees and desperate Instagram posts. The other is about to walk down an aisle inside the most famous arena in the world. You don't have to like Taylor Swift, I certainly don't, to look at this and admit the obvious. This round, this very petty, very deliberate, very Madison Square Garden shaped round goes to Taylor decisively. And something tells me Blake knows it too, which is probably why that headline about her being upset exists in the first place. Anyway, that's where my head is at with all of this. Tell me what you think in the comments. Is this an Easter egg, a coincidence, or the single most expensive diss in wedding history? Because I know exactly where I've landed.